So virtualized infrastructure is the concept of moving from the traditional stovepipe approach where you have an application running on a server running on a specific network to a more flexible dynamic one where applications and servers are provisioned across a dynamic infrastructure virtually so that different servers share the same hardware, share network segments, share storage. And in this way, we have much more flexibility. We're able to get much more utilization out of our infrastructure, and we can support business needs and the business benefits of these applications much better. When I look at the technologies that are enabling the virtualized infrastructure, there's several of them. Certainly technologies such as Zen or VMware that allow virtualizations of servers, have multiple servers on a physical platform is one of them. But technologies such as SAN, storage attached networking, and virtualized LANs, VLANs, as well as some of the emerging interconnects between devices are also advancing the cause of the virtualized infrastructure. We can get to the point right now where the communications time between elements within the data center is approaching that of communication between elements on a motherboard and a server. So once we can geographically distribute those different components of a server, we can actually get to the point where the concept of a server as we know it, a box that has memory and storage and processor, is actually abstracted to those where we have that same device spread over an entire data center or maybe even geographically dispersed across the country or over the world. In some ways, the business drivers of virtualized infrastructure are getting more from what you have already. When we look at utilization in data centers right now for servers, they tend to be very low. And people tend to plan for the spikes in usage, but that also tends to drive you to situations where, for the most part, your servers are sitting around fairly idle. Waste power, waste space, waste cooling. And certainly in data centers right now, we don't necessarily have a lot of capacity in terms of power and cooling, so let's get more from what we got. Some of the common objections I hear when I talk about virtualized infrastructure is, oh, we're going to have a performance hit. And it is true that with technology such as virtualization from a software perspective, you can experience a 10 to 15% performance hit. But if you look at the advance in the hardware perspective, with chips increasing in speed every generation, you can easily overcome any sort of software performance hits that you get. Another objection that I hear is, well, it's insecure. If I have applications that are running or servers that are running side by side on the same physical machine, I might have security issues. And while it's true that you have to plan and architect for it, you can always make applications running in the virtual environment just as secure as if they're running in the physical environment. A third objection that I hear is that, well, we lose control if we move to a virtualized infrastructure. I don't have tight control over where an application is running and how it's running. The reality is that you have just as much as control before, perhaps even more, because you can set parameters on how those applications run, how those servers run across the virtualized infrastructure. You can provision, you can orchestrate much better than you can in the physical world. Looking forward with virtual infrastructure, my vision of this is it may be a little bit further than even some of the industry pundits would look like, but I envision a time where the server as we know it goes away. It's kind of funny, in certain instances, this rush towards virtual infrastructure is a rush towards the mainframe days. Mainframes had everything we want in a virtual infrastructure: secure, highly available services, good performance. It just so happened that mainframes were kind of cumbersome to work with. But in the future, I see servers as really being banks of commodity elements such as memory, processors, storage, and interconnects that are glommed together in ways that are appropriate for the business application at hand. So the concept of going and buying a big server is going to be replaced by the concept of kitting together elements of memory, storage, and processor from banks of that may or may not be in the enterprise data center. We may see the emergence of processor-only sourcing, or outsourcing, or memory-only outsourcing, or storage-only outsourcing. So that in the future, servers really will be very highly fragmented across different data centers, enterprises, and providers of the technology. When you're looking at virtual infrastructure, I think some of the key takeaways are getting more from what you got. It is making better use of the investment in hardware, network, and infrastructure to support the business. I think a second key takeaway of virtualized infrastructure is it's really putting control of the infrastructure in the hands of the business. Let's provide appropriate infrastructure based on the business benefit that you get from those applications that's running on the infrastructure. And thirdly, it allows you to do some interesting things with outsourcing key components of your infrastructure. If you don't need to support applications in-house, the virtualized infrastructure makes the move from in-house to outsourced provision of that application that much easier.